Welcome to the Train the Trainer session for the Interactive Digital Competence Workshop. My name is Melissa Selzener. I am a lecturer and researcher at the Hanze University of Applied Sciences, which is one of the partners of Ignition. Ignition is an Erasmus-founded cooperation partnership that strives to promote digital literacy and inclusion in higher education. We aim to increase awareness about this important topic and to try to improve digital competences for students, teachers, staff, and our external partners. One of the tools that we developed is the Interactive Digital Competence Workshop, during which teachers can exchange valuable experiences and ideas with regards to their digital competences in the educational practice. So today's goal is to train the trainer, and after the session you will be able to facilitate the game-based workshop in your own institution, and thereby hopefully help your fellow educators to improve their digital competences. So the agenda of what we're going to discuss today, we start with the goal of the workshop. Then I will explain a little bit more about the background, the materials needed, how to play it, and in the end there will be space for your questions. So the goal is to level up your digital competences in a fun and creative way. And we'll do this in the workshop by having educators develop and share their own creative ideas regarding the different digital competences scenario that will be presented in the game. I will tell you more about this later. The game is based on the digital competences framework from the European Union. You can see it here on the screen. There are 6 different areas for digital competences for educators, which is number 1, professional engagement, with things like organizational communication, professional collaboration, and reflective practice. 2 is digital resources, for example, the selecting, creating and modifying and managing these resources. The 3rd one is teaching and learning, which is really one of the foundational one. You can also see that they are connected to all the other areas. Assessment, with the assessment strategies, analyzing evidence and feedback. Number 5 is empowering learners. So important aspects are accessibility and inclusion, and differentiation and personalization. And the 6th one, facilitating learners' digital competences. For example, information and media literacy and communication. So this framework really builds the ground of this workshop, and you will see it later in the competence area cards and scenarios that are based on this framework. The materials needed to play this workshop with one group will be listed below. One group consists of 6 players and 1 facilitator. Ideally, they are placed around a round table so that everybody can see each other. And you can also play this with several groups at the same time, depending on how many people you have that want to play the workshop. These are the things that you need to play. There's a manual, a player board for each player, digital competency area cards, 12 digital competency tokens, that is 2 per player, and 18 scenario cards for the different digital competency areas. And you will also need either pen or papers to record the responses or a Mentimeter. The workshop takes around 2 hours to play. So where do you get these materials? There's 2 options. The first one is there are physical copies available at our partner institutions. That is the Hanze University of Applied Sciences, the ZU, IPB, or the Hochschule Bremen. So if you're working at one of these institutions, you can get a physical copy. Otherwise, you can download the materials from our website. If you click on the link, you can go to Interactive Workshop and then click on Access the Material. And then the zip folder will download where you can access the material. After downloading, you can simply print the materials and then cut them out. Then you have everything that you need. The game is split in 3 phases: the setup phase, the gameplay phase, and the reflection phase. And I will now take you through each of these phases and what the role of the facilitator is. In the first phase, the setup, the purpose is to set up the game and also to let each player choose one of the 6 areas of digital competency. In the game, they will play the role of the expert for this area that they chose. So the first step in this phase is to deal out the digital competency area cards. These are the 6 based on the framework that I showed you before, and also the color-coded scenario cards. If you have fewer than 6 players, you can select which of these areas you would like to include. I will now quickly show you all of the competency area cards. One is about teaching and learning. You always have a short overview of what it's about and some examples. Assessment, empowering learners, digital resources, professional engagement, and facilitating learners' digital competences. And then for each of these areas, you also have 3 scenario cards. So for example, on this one, you can see on the front the scenario overview, which is a general description of the scenario. For example, you want your students to create innovative ideas for a project in their subject. And at the backside, you will have the full scenario. For example, you would like your students to develop innovative ideas in class and to organize and share them with the rest of the students. How would you facilitate this? So while the overview gives a general idea about what the question will be about, the full scenario displays the question that you will have to answer in the game. So after you dealt out these cards, allow the players a short amount of time to read both the competency area cards and the scenario cards for themselves, so that they get an idea what this area entails. This should take about 5 minutes. Afterwards, you have a round where each player reads out their area title and provides an example of what this means in their own day-to-day practice. So for example, if you have the competence area empowering learners, they can say how they do this in their own lessons in their daily work. If they cannot make such an example, they can go with one of the examples listed on the card. This should take around 1 minute. Afterwards, you set a timer of 2 minutes and instruct the players to discuss with one of their neighbors. They should decide whether they would like to switch their cards or not. So each of these players has one of the competence cards. They discuss with each other whether they would like to switch these, depending on which area they feel more familiar with. And afterwards, players discuss with their other neighbor whether they would like to switch cards, also for 2 minutes. So now some players may have the original cards and other players may have switched it once or even twice with their neighbors. So each player has now briefly considered 3 areas of digital competences and has been assigned to a competence area that suits them. So they will be the expert for this area during the game. Afterwards, you have each player read out the title of the competence area and show their card to the others to show its color. So then everybody knows what all these competencies areas are. Then you deal out the player boards and the digital competency tokens, where 2 tokens are given to each player. And you ask players to mark 12 digital competency tokens on the player board. These will be used for betting during the game. I will now show you the player board and the tokens. This is how it looks like if you download the material from the website. You will have a player board with the scores in the middle, and you will have 2 tokens that need to be cut out. One you place at number 12 because this is your starting point, and the other one you can use later for betting on the answers of yourself or of your other players. On the right side, you also have the turn order. which gives an indication of which are the different points to be considered during your turn. I will talk more about this later. And the last step to conclude phase number 1 is to distribute the pens and papers or give a code to a Mentimeter where you can record the responses. So now we have reached phase 2 of the game, which is the gameplay. The purpose of this phase is for players to explore their expertise in the 6 areas of the digital competencies for educators. It's important that as a facilitator, you remind the players that the solutions are focused on digital competences, both in terms of technical proficiency and responsible use of the proper tool for the situation. So even though it doesn't always say specifically that it's about digital competencies in these cards of scenarios, consider this when writing your answer. And the facilitator decides which of the experts will start in the first round. The first step, the expert that the facilitator has chosen for a given competency area chooses one of the 3 scenario cards and reads the scenario overview out loud. So this is the general overview of the scenario that later there will be specific questions connected to. The players to the left and the right of the expert, these are the competing players, can now place a bet of either 0, 1, or 2 tokens for their own confidence in their answer to the scenario, and that the expert will choose this answer. And they mark this bet on the current player board under the current bet section. I will explain this also visually because it might be a little bit hard to follow. So these are the 6 players. They're indicated with a P and the facilitator sitting on the table. Now the facilitator has assigned an expert to start. So this expert reads out the scenario overview. And the competing players, see, this is the scenario overview, and the competing players now have to place a bet on what they think, on how confident they are in themselves that they can provide a good answer and will be able to convince the expert with their answer. They can then place the bet on the current bet section. So if they're very confident that if they're very familiar, for example, with this topic or the area, they can place it on 2 and say, I'm very confident that I will be able to convince the expert. If they're not so sure, they think, oh, maybe I can do it, they can do it on 1. And if they think, I have no idea, I'm not so sure if I can convince the expert, then they place it on 0. After the competing players have placed their bets, also the other players on the table can place a bet on which of the competing players will have their answer chosen by the expert. So all these 3 players can also place a bet on which of these 2 players will be able to convince the expert. After placing the bets, the expert reads the full scenario out loud. This is the full question that has to be answered. Each of the competing players now has 1 minute to write their response to the scenario. So they can write this either on a piece of paper or digitally via a Mentimeter. After this, each player has 1 minute to convince the expert with their answer to the scenario. So the role of the facilitator here is to keep the time and tell players when they can start or stop with writing their responses and convincing the expert. After both players have finished, the expert decides which answers solve the scenario best. And based on the expert's decision, all players mark their digital competency tokens on the player boards. So it means that they add, in case they won the bet, or subtract, in case they lost the bet, the number of tokens that they bet on, to or from their score on the player board. I will also show this visually. So everybody starts at 12 tokens. So let's say I bet on a player 2 points that they will be able to convince the expert. If the expert indeed was convinced by this person, I will gain 2 points and I will place my token on the 14. If the other player won this round and the player that I bet on did not convince the expert, then I have to subtract 2 points from my score. And the same goes for if I bet only 1. And then the playing proceeds clockwise. So now the player previously on the right of the expert becomes the expert, and the players on the left and right of that new expert are now the competing players. So let's see how that looks like on the table. Before this person here, the green one was the expert with the competing players on the left and right. And now it switches one place to the side, so that now the previously competing player is the expert, and the people left and right of them are the expert, are the competing players. So all of these steps are repeated until each expert has gone through 2 scenarios. So that is 2 rounds around the table. And if you want, you can do a little break after 1 round has finished and then continue. So as a facilitator, you're trying to make sure that all of these steps are being done in the right order. And you're also there to ask deepening questions if people explain their answer to a scenario. And then we are at the last phase of the game, which is the reflection phase. And that is for players to reflect on the experiences during the workshop. So the steps for the facilitator, the first step is to ask the group to reflect on the experiences during the game and also to decide on the top 3 scenario responses. So as a facilitator, you're asking these questions and you're trying to facilitate the group in the discussion and also ask deepening questions to get to know how they experienced it. If there are several groups playing at the same time, then the facilitator also asks each group to present the top 3 scenario answers to the entire group. And when presenting that, the players are naming the name of the competency area. So for example, empowering learners, then also the specific scenario that's written on a scenario card, and that what the answer was to this scenario by the group and why they found it such a good response. So by this, the groups can also exchange their experiences in a broader context. And at the end of the game, the facilitator thanks everyone for the contribution and ends the workshop. So I hope that with this explanation, you're now able to facilitate a game-based workshop in your own institution and that you can help your fellow educators improve their digital competences. Thank you for your attention. And I wonder if you have any questions. I'm coming back to the group.
That was very good, Melissa. I think it's an excellent idea, game-based workshop. One question I do have, what happens if they get to 0 on their betting? So if you, for argument's sake, bet on the poor losing argument all the time and you end up at 0, what happens then?
Well, I mean, the reason that there are these tokens involved, that you can count your score, is because it's a bit playful, it's fun, it's a little bit competition, but in the end, it doesn't really matter what your score is. There's not really a losing or winning in this game. It's really about exchanging experiences. It just makes it a bit more playful, but if you get to 0, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, that's fine.
Nothing happens.
Thank you.
Najla.
I know that you conducted this game 5 times. And what was the most difficult part, Melissa? Or have you experienced any difficulty while facilitating the game?
I think it's important to keep track of time. If you have a really clear end time of the workshop, that you make sure that you go through all these steps, because sometimes people really start to discuss, which is really nice. So you want to balance this. You want to give room for this spontaneous discussion that happens, because this is really nice interaction moment. But then you also really want to make sure that you move through the phases of the game to be able to finish it without time pressure in the end. So I think balancing this, giving room for everybody to share, but also keeping a bit of a pace throughout the game.
Okay, thank you.
Madelon.
I was wondering how long does it take to play this game-based workshop doing the 2 rounds with one group or with 2 groups? This is one thing. And I also was wondering what happens with the reflections afterward? Is that being recorded? Are you going to have people do something with it? Or does it just stay in the group and that's it?
So your first question was how long the workshop takes, and the answer is around 2 hours. So the setup phase is around 15 minutes. Then you have the gameplay, which is the majority of the time, which is around 75 minutes. And then in the end, the reflection depends on if you have just one group or several groups. I think if you have just one group, you can do it in like 10, 15 minutes. If you have 2 groups, I would really take half an hour for this. Because then you have really the time to exchange the ideas between the groups. And yeah, what's being done afterwards with these reflections, I think that really depends on who is facilitating this workshop and in which context it is happening and which organization it is taking place. I think, yeah, that really depends on who's conducting it in which context. Yeah. Keith. Oh, no, sorry. I see Janus first. You have there's a number now on the hand.
All right. I can see that working very well with groups that are open and communicative and creative. Are there also any intervention steps for maybe not so creative groups that don't have like any examples on their mind already for these different competencies to, you know, facilitate more communication?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to rely on what's there already in the group. So then maybe as a facilitator, if one person cannot come up with an example, you can ask, is there somebody else who can come up with an example? Is there somebody else who would like to share an experience with this type of area? So I think just reflecting this question then back to the whole group instead of feeling that you need to solve it as a facilitator. I think that would be how I would deal with this. You're referring to the setup phase, right? In the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the game phase, right? I mean, you're presented with a topic, and you're supposed to give an answer to that. And you know, what happens if both players to my left and right don't really have an answer to give for the question at hand?
Yeah. And I think Madelon and Najla, you also played this workshop already. Have you had a situation like that? And then how did you deal with it in the group?
Yeah, it has to do a little bit also if players are colleagues, they know each other, they feel confident to also say, well, I really wouldn't know. So it depends a bit on the team spirit and the ambience that you have. But I played it 2 times. It actually didn't happen. People always have kind of an idea, or they would say, well, difficult, but might be this or that. So and I think that's the role of the facilitator also, is to really express and to reaffirm that we are here to learn. Even if we are teachers, we are all learners. Not a problem if we don't know. We help each other, just stress that and try to give people confidence, make them feel comfortable. And as Melissa also said, there is for sure someone at the table that has an idea or think that they can have an idea.
I think it's a good point. Sorry, Keith, I'm just, in a second, I'm going to you. Just reacting to Madelon. I think that's a good point you're making. It depends on if you already know each other, if it's colleagues of you, if it's new people. I think if people don't know each other, it's always good in the beginning to have a little introduction so people feel a bit more comfortable, know what someone's background is, in which area they work, from which organization they work. So a little warm-up can be nice so that people feel free to share. All right, Keith.
Oh, sorry.
Nejla, do you want to go first? You had your hand up as
I know,
well.
just
So.
in relation to Melissa's question and follow up on Madelon's comment. So it is also important. I mean, I played this at the testing session, so I didn't really take part in real case. And but I think it's also important to clarify right at the beginning that this is just a game and we don't know everything. So this is about exchanging ideas and there is no right or wrong, but there is a learning process.
Yeah, nice addition. Thank you, Nejla.
Yeah, my question was just really with regards to whoever is nominated as the expert. Have you ever had any experience where the expert is torn about who they're going to put the winner of the bet on as such, whose argument convinced them most? Was there ever somebody sitting on the fence? And was it then down to the facilitator to split the vote, or what way did they do it to work that one out? Devil's advocate.
Yeah, I see Madelon nodding. Do you want to add something?
No, it's a good question. Actually, it's the little competing element there makes it like people are trying to win the points, but it is all very in a very playful way. So no experience, no bad experience in that. It can happen that people really have no clue and they're like, oh my God, what would I do? But I think what happened most of the time, people would get into the playing spirit. They would want to contribute. They would want to come up with like maybe a convincing, opinion or a way of dealing with the situation. So I haven't experienced what you mentioned here, but maybe you did, Melissa, in your workshops.
I had it. Yeah, I had it that sometimes the expert found it difficult to decide. And then what I did as a facilitator is to encourage them to think out loud, like what are the thoughts going through their mind? Like what did they think, what came up in their mind when they heard the answers? What did they found valuable about the answers? What were parts where they were not sure about it? Just to make this process a bit more transparent, because it can also help the group think about how different people deal with it. And then I think also what Nisha said, saying it's just a game, and in the end, you have to make a decision. But it can be sometimes hard, but I think that's also just general in life. Sometimes you just need to make a decision. Yeah.
What happened once, this reminds me when we played this, in the end, people on the table, of course, they are betting, right, on the different competing players. And there was a pattern showing up there that was really fun. The pattern was that in the end, everyone would vote most for the underdog. So the ones that said they really wouldn't know, or they think, well, I'm not sure, let's be safe on this side. In the end, most players on the table would, put their vote on the underdogs, and actually, they actually ended up winning, which was really an interesting outcome as well, because it's a game. We're competing in a kind and playful way, and in the end, the one that won was the underdog.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Are there any more questions? Okay. Thank you very much.